My mother-in-law asked me for $10,000. I said no, and that's when she decided to destroy my marriage. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel, thank you. I've always believed that love was supposed to feel like home, warm, safe, a place where your heart could rest without worry. At 26, I thought I had found that with Emily, my wife. She had this way of making even the dullest days feel like the sun had a reason to shine just for us. We built our little life together with late-night talks, cheap takeout, and dreams of a future filled with more love than money. But the day I met her mother, something in my gut told me I'd just walked into a storm without an umbrella. Her name was Patricia, though everyone called her Patty. She had a smile that looked friendly at first glance, but if you stared long enough, you'd see the cracks. The kind of smile that didn't quite reach the eyes. The kind of smile you get from someone who's already figuring out what they can take from you. Back then, I didn't think much of it. I was young, in love, and too blinded by the glow of what Emily and I had. Patty seemed opinionated, sure, but a lot of moms are. I shrugged off the subtle digs she made about my job, my apartment, my car. I told myself she was just protective of her daughter. Looking back now, I see it for what it was, a slow, quiet evaluation. Like a hawk circling, deciding if the prey was worth swooping in for. The first few months of marriage were good. Better than good. We were in that stage where everything still felt new. But Patty? She was always there, in the background, making her presence known. A drop-by without calling. A quick chat that somehow turned into 2 hours of passive-aggressive advice. I tried to keep the peace because I didn't want to cause problems between Emily and me. I had no idea then that keeping the peace would cost me more than I ever thought possible. It all started one rainy Tuesday. I'd just gotten home from work, tie loosened, shoes kicked off, ready to sink into the couch. Emily was in the kitchen, her voice soft, almost nervous, as she told me her mom needed to talk to me. Alone. I walked into the living room, and there she was, Patty, perched on our sofa like it was her throne. She didn't waste time with small talk. She leaned in, lowered her voice, and said she needed a favor. Not that "can you drive me to the store" kind of favor. No, this was a big one. She wanted $10,000. And that, my friends, was the moment my life took a sharp turn down a road I didn't know existed. When the words left her mouth, $10,000, I actually froze for a second. It wasn't just the amount. It was the way she said it, like she was asking me to pass the salt, not drain my savings. There was no hesitation, no shame. Just expectation. I waited for her to explain. Some urgent family emergency, a medical bill, a crisis that might justify a request like that. But no, she stayed vague. "It's for something important," she said, as if that was all I needed to know. She acted like I should already be reaching for my wallet, no questions asked. I asked her why she didn't go to a bank, or at least explain the situation to me. Her lips curled into this half-smirk, half-frown, and she said something about not wanting to owe strangers. "Family helps family," she added, leaning forward like she was teaching me a moral lesson. I think that was her way of saying I didn't have the right values. Then she went for the low blow, the one thing manipulative people always reach for when they want to corner you. She questioned whether I was the kind of man who steps up when his wife's family needs him. That's when I knew this wasn't about money. This was about control. I told her, as calmly as I could, that I didn't have $10,000 lying around, and even if I did, I wouldn't hand it over without knowing what it was for. Her smile cracked. The warmth in her voice vanished. In its place was something cold and sharp, like she'd just decided I was no longer an ally. She didn't argue. She didn't plead. She just stood up, straightened her dress, and walked out of my living room like she owned the place. No goodbye. No thank you for listening. Just silence. And honestly, that silence felt like a threat. When Emily came back into the room, she had this nervous energy, like she knew what had just happened but didn't want to face it. I didn't tell her the details, I just said her mom had asked for something I couldn't give. She looked disappointed, but she didn't push. At least, not yet. That night, lying in bed, I kept replaying the conversation in my head. Something told me this wasn't the end of it. And I was right. The shift didn't happen overnight. At first, it was little things. Emily started coming home later from work, always with a quick excuse: traffic, last-minute meetings, a friend who needed her ear. She'd still smile at me when she walked through the door, but it wasn't the same smile. It didn't linger. It didn't reach her eyes. During dinner, she seemed distracted, her phone lighting up on the table more than usual. I didn't have to ask who it was. I could tell from the way her thumb hovered over the screen before typing back that it was her mom. Every time she read a new message, her mood seemed to shift. Sometimes softer, sometimes colder. Then came the comments. They were never direct, but they cut all the same. "Mom says we should help family when we can. Maybe you're being too careful with money. You know, not everything is about savings, sometimes it's about doing the right thing." I'd bite my tongue, knowing exactly whose voice was echoing through her words. The more I ignored it, the bolder the comments became. One Saturday, Emily suggested we go to her mom's for lunch. I agreed, hoping maybe we could smooth things over. But the moment we walked in, I knew this was going to be anything but a friendly meal. Patty greeted Emily with warm hugs and sweet words, but when her eyes landed on me, it was like the temperature in the room dropped. She kept herself busy with small talk until halfway through lunch, when she launched into a story about her friend's husband, a real man who had given her $15,000 to help during hard times. She looked at me more than she looked at Emily while telling it, her smile tightening like she was waiting for me to flinch. I didn't. I just kept eating, chewing slowly, refusing to take the bait. On the drive home, Emily brought it up again. Why couldn't I just help her mom this one time? I reminded her that we were saving for our future, a house, maybe kids one day. I told her giving away that kind of money would put us in a bad spot. She went quiet, but her silence wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, like she was carrying someone else's anger into our home. That night, I realized something important. Patty wasn't asking for money anymore. She was trying to make me the villain in my own marriage. The tension in our home became like background noise, always there, humming low, never letting me forget it. Emily and I still laughed sometimes, still had moments where we felt like the couple we used to be, but they were fewer and further between. And every time we seemed to get back on the same page, Patty would somehow pull us apart again. It started with the accidental comments. Emily would come home from visiting her mom with little tidbits of information that made me look bad, things I'd supposedly said, or opinions I supposedly had. At first, I thought Emily was just misunderstanding. But then I realized Patty was twisting my words before they even left my mouth. One evening, Emily confronted me about something ridiculous, that I didn't think her side of the family was as important as mine. I stared at her, completely thrown. Where was this coming from? She said Patty had told her I'd made some comment about wasting money on in-laws. I knew exactly what conversation she was referring to, and I knew the version Patty fed her was nothing like what I'd said. I tried to explain, but it was like speaking to someone through a pane of glass. Emily was hearing me, but she wasn't listening. She was already replaying the version of the story her mom had told. The phone calls became more frequent. The private messages more secretive. Emily started stepping into the other room to take calls, lowering her voice like she was protecting state secrets. Every time she came back, her mood was just a little different, cooler, sharper. It all came to a head one Friday night. We were supposed to have a quiet dinner at home, but Emily walked in tense and restless. She barely touched her food. Then, out of nowhere, she asked me point-blank why I hated her mother. I told her I just didn't trust her. Emily's face hardened, like I'd confirmed some suspicion Patty had been planting for weeks. That was the first real fight we had in our marriage. Not raised voices, not slamming doors, but the kind of fight where you feel something important break between you. I went to bed that night realizing I wasn't just dealing with a greedy mother-in-law anymore. I was dealing with someone who knew how to weaponize love. By this point, Patty wasn't just a shadow in the background anymore, she was a storm moving right into the center of my marriage. It started with small, calculated moves. Emily's birthday was coming up, and I had planned a surprise dinner at her favorite restaurant. I'd even booked the table weeks in advance. But 2 days before, Emily told me she had already made plans with her mom for that night. Apparently, Patty had, accidentally, let slip that I didn't have anything special planned, so she wanted to make sure Emily still had a nice evening. I tried not to take it personally, but when the night came, Emily's mood was off. She came home from dinner with her mom acting distant, like the two of them had been discussing me, and not in a good way. Then came the real hit. One afternoon, Emily got a message while she was at work. I was home that day, and her laptop pinged with the notification. I didn't go snooping, but the preview of the message popped up right on the screen. It was from her mom, and it read, "I hope you see now what I've been trying to tell you. You deserve better than someone who puts himself first." I stared at it, my stomach twisting. It wasn't just about the money anymore. Patty was openly trying to plant the idea that I wasn't good enough for Emily. That I was selfish. That I was the obstacle to her happiness. That night, Emily was cold and quiet. When I asked what was wrong, she said she'd been thinking a lot about our relationship, about whether we were truly compatible. She didn't say it outright, but I could hear her mom's voice in every word. I knew then that Patty wasn't going to stop. She wasn't just trying to get $10,000 out of me anymore. She was trying to break us apart, to paint me as the villain until Emily couldn't see me any other way. And if I didn't do something soon, she was going to win. I'd had enough. For weeks, I'd been letting Patty set the pace, reacting to her games like I was trapped in a rigged match. But that Friday night, after Emily went to bed early with barely a word to me, I sat in the living room staring at the dark screen of the TV and made a decision. I wasn't going to just ride this out. I was going to end it. But to do that, I needed leverage, something Patty couldn't talk her way out of. The first step was understanding her game. She wasn't just greedy, she was strategic. She knew exactly how to twist a story, exactly when to push Emily's buttons, and exactly how to make herself look like the concerned, selfless mother while painting me as the selfish husband. I realized that if I wanted to beat her, I couldn't just confront her, I needed proof. So I started quietly collecting information. I went through old messages Emily had shown me, remembering the little inconsistencies in Patty's stories. I talked to a few mutual acquaintances, carefully, and learned that Patty had a bit of a reputation. She'd borrowed money from friends before, promising to pay it back, but somehow always finding a reason she couldn't. But then I hit something bigger. A guy named Ron, an old family friend, mentioned that Patty had been in some legal trouble a few years back over an investment scam. Nothing major enough to land her in jail, but enough to leave a trail of unhappy people and unpaid debt. She'd managed to bury the whole thing under a smile and a sob story, but the paper trail still existed. I found court records. I found names of people she'd burned. I found enough to show that Patty's urgent need for $10,000 wasn't just bad luck, it was a pattern. The more I uncovered, the angrier I got. Not just at her, but at myself for letting it go on this long. She'd been running the same game on me that she'd run on half a dozen other people, only this time she had the added weapon of my wife's trust. That night, I saved every document, every screenshot, every piece of dirt I could find. I didn't know exactly how I was going to use it yet, but I knew one thing: Patty had no idea I was coming for her. Once I had the proof, it stopped being a question of if I'd use it, it was just a matter of how. I couldn't just throw it in Emily's face. If I did, she'd think I'd been digging for dirt on her mom out of spite, and Patty would use that to make me look even worse. No, I needed Emily to see the truth for herself, in a way that left no room for Patty's lies. So I started playing along. The next time Emily brought up her mom's situation, I didn't push back. I told her I understood how hard it must be for Patty and that maybe we could look at ways to help, just not in cash. That got Patty's attention fast. Within days, Emily told me her mom wanted to meet, to talk things over. I suggested we all meet at a coffee shop, somewhere public where Patty couldn't turn it into a screaming match. I also made sure to, accidentally, leave my phone recording in my pocket. The conversation went exactly as I expected. Patty came in smiling, sat down, and started weaving this dramatic story about her financial emergency. She spoke in circles, never giving specifics, just enough to make herself sound like a victim. When I asked simple questions like why she needed exactly $10,000 or how she planned to pay it back, she dodged them every time. But then she slipped. When I gently mentioned I'd heard she'd been in some trouble with a past investment, her face froze for just a second. Then she laughed it off, but I could tell she was rattled. She insisted it was all lies, made up by bitter people who didn't want to see her succeed. I kept my tone calm, almost sympathetic, and that seemed to make her drop her guard. She started bragging, about how she'd gotten creative with money in the past, even hinting at how she'd worked her way around certain debts. By the time the coffee was cold, I had a recording that painted Patty exactly as she was: manipulative, evasive, and deeply dishonest. But the real part of the trap wasn't just recording her. It was what I planned to do with it. I wasn't going to send it to Emily directly. I was going to make sure she heard it from someone who had no reason to lie, someone Patty couldn't accuse of having an agenda. And that, I knew, would destroy her. I knew that if I handed Emily the recording myself, she'd see it through the filter Patty had built. She'd think I was twisting things or editing it to make her mom look bad. Patty was too good at turning accusations into pity. So instead, I gave it to someone Patty couldn't spin, her older sister, Linda. Linda and Patty had a complicated relationship. They weren't enemies, but they weren't exactly close either. Linda was the opposite of Patty in almost every way: quiet, cautious, and allergic to drama. If she heard something shady, she wouldn't gossip. She'd investigate. I sent Linda the recording anonymously with a short message. "You should know what Patty has been telling people. This might affect your family too." No name. No details. Just enough to make her listen. A week later, everything started to unravel. Emily came home one evening looking pale and confused. She said Linda had called her out of the blue, asking if she knew what Patty had been up to. Emily had brushed it off at first, until Linda insisted she listened to something. That's when Emily heard it. Her mother, in her own voice, dodging every question, bragging about getting creative with money, and laughing off her past trouble like it was just clever business. Emily didn't say much to me that night. She sat on the couch for hours, staring at nothing. I could tell her brain was racing, piecing together every half-truth, every strange comment, every moment that hadn't made sense until now. The next day, Emily went to see Patty. I didn't go with her, I didn't have to. By the time she came back, her face told me everything. She looked like someone who'd had the wind knocked out of them. She didn't deny it, Emily finally said. She just tried to make it sound like everyone does it. Like it's no big deal. And just like that, the wall between us, the one Patty had been building brick by brick, started to crumble. Patty's crown had cracked. She wasn't the wise, protective mother anymore. She was just a woman caught in her own lies. But I wasn't done yet, because Patty had tried to break my marriage. And I wasn't the kind of man who left a job half-finished. Once Emily had finally seen Patty for who she was, the emotional part of the battle was over. But I wanted more than just distance from her. I wanted to make sure she couldn't hurt us, or anyone else, ever again. That meant taking away the one thing she used to get what she wanted. Her reputation. Patty's entire game depended on people believing she was respectable. The doting mother. The friend in need. The harmless neighbor. That's how she convinced people to trust her, and eventually hand over their money. If that image cracked in the eyes of her social circle, she'd lose her main weapon. I didn't have to look far to find the perfect audience. Patty was a proud member of a local women's networking group, where she regularly talked about financial independence and helping women through tough times. I had a contact in that group, a woman named Claire, who owed me a favor. I didn't tell Claire what to say or do. I just sent her the recording, along with the court records I'd dug up. She took it from there. Within days, the whispers started. People who'd always greeted Patty warmly now gave her tight, awkward smiles. Her phone calls went unanswered. Her little lunch invites were, suddenly, impossible to attend. The networking group quietly removed her from their directory, no public announcement, no drama, just gone. And then came the cherry on top. One of the women Patty had previously borrowed money from, and never repaid, decided she'd had enough. With the proof now circulating, she filed a small claims case against her. It wasn't a huge amount, but it was public. And in our town, public was deadly. When Emily told me about it, she didn't smile, but there was a certain relief in her voice. "She can't touch us anymore," she said. And she was right. Patty had gone from someone who could walk into any room and charm her way into wallet, to someone people crossed the street to avoid. For the first time in months, our home felt quiet, peaceful. But I knew the real victory wasn't just in what I'd done to Patty. It was in what we'd rebuilt after she tried to tear it apart. After everything that happened, life didn't go back to the way it was before. It wasn't possible. Too much had been said. Too much had been exposed. But in a way, that was the point. We didn't need to go back, we needed to move forward. Emily and I started talking again, really talking. Without her mother's constant voice in her ear, she could actually hear me. She apologized for doubting me, for letting her mom's words come between us. And I apologized for not stepping in sooner, for letting things get as far as they did before fighting back. We made a quiet decision together. Patty was no longer part of our daily lives. No more surprise visit. No more quick chats that turned into interrogations. Emily still loved her mother, that's something no amount of betrayal could erase, but love didn't mean giving her the power to wreck our marriage. The town moved on quickly from Patty's fall, but she didn't. She tried a few times to slip back into her old circles, but doors that once opened easily stayed shut. People remembered. And in the world Patty lived in, reputation was everything. For me, the revenge wasn't in watching her suffer. It was in knowing she couldn't pull the same tricks on anyone else. She'd lost her audience, her trust fund of goodwill. Without it, she was just another person with a long list of burned bridges. On a quiet Sunday morning, months later, I sat with Emily on our porch. The sun was coming up, and for the first time in a long time, I felt still. No tension. No games. No second-guessing every conversation. Emily reached over, took my hand, and said something simple. We made it. And we had. Patty had tried to break us for $10,000. Instead, she'd lost far more than money. She'd lost her grip. She'd lost her mask. And she'd lost us. I don't forgive her. I don't need to. Some people deserve the weight of their own actions. And now, she gets to carry hers. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel, thank you.